This is a session that took place October 1st, online, of course, and that was directed by the application group. And what we would like to do from an agenda perspective, to show you some things that that were explained over there in that meeting, give you a little bit background.
Yeah, close the door.
Show some examples of some products that were talked about, and then in relation to DycoTrade, what can it mean for us, and the plan of having more presentations just like this, because you should understand that this is a starting point of more presentations of products, of strategies, and those kind of stories. So this will be just an overview, not more and not less. Maybe you ever heard of about the events of the WAVE presentation, because Microsoft is organizing those events already for more than 3 years. And in the past years, they were traveling in Europe. It was most of the time in Amsterdam. So where they were explaining what they were doing. And the person you were seeing on the screen is James Phillips. And his official title is the president of the Business Applications Group. So he is the product manager of all business applications in Microsoft Dynamics 365. He was doing the presentation about the changes that we can see in the market, the changes that we see where Microsoft is going. And if you would see the presentation, it is pretty Microsoft marketing stories, but with a lot of reality in itself. That is what Microsoft is doing more and more. They are not just telling what they think, but most of the time they sell their new solutions to the larger companies, and then the larger companies are telling the audience of what they think about. And that is also what happened here. The main picture that we are focusing on is the picture that was explained as it is here, because this is the announcement of the combination of all products. And this is called the big picture of One Microsoft. This whole idea of One Microsoft was announced in 2014 when Satya Nadella came on board. And we all thought that, yeah, okay, we will see, you know, how Microsoft is. But this One Microsoft started in 2014 when he came on board. And it really took off in 2017 until today. And that resulted in this picture, where there are, in fact, 3 layers: the Azure layer, Microsoft Power Platform, and a layer of applications, the application platform presented by Microsoft themselves. And that is Microsoft 365 and Microsoft Dynamics 365. Then I'm using One Microsoft marketing statement that they are having more than 500,000 organizations using the Microsoft 365 and Power Platform. And that 97% of Fortune 500 companies are using at least 1 or 2 products of these 2 things. Not very, we say, wow, that is a lot of AX customers, but that's not true, because Microsoft Dynamics 365 is not just AX or the former AX, but most of the companies are using things like Teams and especially CRM. That is very, very interesting for Microsoft. Then James was talking about what they call a fundamental shift, a tectonic change. Why are companies using Microsoft so much? Because Microsoft was always the one that was bringing operating systems, poor quality of products and all that kind of stuff. They had a name. And with the announcement of Azure, a platform where you can run quite some applications, things changed. And what you see today is that there is Azure as a platform. There is a platform of what we call the Power Platform. And what you see, what kind of applications are running on those two platforms, are absolutely not only Microsoft products. I've been to an event in New York for retail, where on the Microsoft booth, when you talk about Azure products, was big announcement of SAP on Azure. So for Microsoft, business applications running on Azure is a priority. Running Microsoft ERP solutions on Azure is okay. For us, people that are working with the Microsoft solutions, it is interesting to see that all these additional products can now also be connected. It's not the idea of being a Microsoft partner, a Microsoft ERP partner, to link with Salesforce. It's more important for Microsoft to have Salesforce partners to link with Microsoft. That's the other way around, because they want everybody on the Power Platform. And that is an interesting story. That is a complete change in what we've seen before. Like what we are doing here in DycoTrade when we talk about software, selling software. And Ari Willem is then mentioning that we talk about recurring revenue. If we sold it one time, then every month we can send an invoice. That is exactly what Microsoft is doing. Their income changed a lot in the past years. And the last announcement of their revenue, yearly revenue, is $36 billion. And most of it is recurring revenue, which means that every year they start with a certain amount in the order of $30 billion. When you are selling perpetual licensing, then you have to start every year at new for the most part. And that is what we should bear in mind. And that is also where strategy changes are coming from. So understand that applications for Microsoft means every application that I can connect to Azure or the platform. When you talk about data, because that is the next more important step for them, for Microsoft, is talking about data. Data that is coming from everywhere. If you compare data in the world of ERP, where they talk about forms over data, which means that in an ERP system, you have functionality where you create transactions and you store the transactions. And most of the time you create some business reports and you see at the end as a description, this is what we have been doing in the past month. But data in itself is, you can find everywhere, which means that the value of the data that you are collecting can be much more benefit for a company. If you talk today to the right transporter, you can have a connection. If you put your commodity in a ship and you say, let the ship sail, and you can ask, where is this ship? What can I do? Is it already past a border where I can still sell it or not? You can have complete control over everything what is happening. What you have to do for that is absolutely not difficult. So data in itself, no matter where it's coming from, is a very important part. And when you look at statistics by Gartner, for instance, of the quadrants, which companies are leading with the functionality for data extraction, then Microsoft is very positioned on the high level of the leaderboard. There is a new announcement, and that was also on this session. The new announcement is Azure Synapse. Interestingly enough, when you talk about Power BI, which is on the Power Platform, then Synapse is on the Azure platform. And Synapse is, in fact, the way you organize data, the way you put data somewhere. If it's a cube, if it's a warehouse, or if it's a lake, all those kind of words are not so important anymore. The idea is that you can connect any data, no matter where it's coming from, through Azure Synapse, where you can extract the data you would like. For the DycoTrade perspective, we have quite some questions from customers that if we can provide them with pricing, or can we provide them with information that is sensitive for their business. And when Synapse is around, then that connection is, you can do that seamlessly. Synapse was announced in the event, and it will be generally available in March 2021.
But are you saying that Microsoft is harvesting the data of our clients? Is that what you're saying?
Synapse is the environment where the data sits, where you can use those data, and the data itself you connect and collect from third parties. But there is no technical limit to talk about with Workday or with any platform that is giving an API where the data is available, and then we can share that. So it's
I understand it's technically possible. I'm just surprised. I mean, I know everything on my phone is being harvested, but I wasn't aware they were doing this on this level as well.
Yeah. It's going further than we all think, probably.
Okay.
Good. Going back to this traditional picture of Microsoft 2017 till today, then I just give you a little overview of what is there in the individual components. So when you talk about Microsoft 365 on the left-hand side, Microsoft 365 is in fact Windows, security, and Microsoft Office. Microsoft Office doesn't exist anymore. It's called Microsoft 365. Microsoft Dynamics 365 are, as Microsoft is putting it, are 9 different components. 5 of them is in the customer engagement corner, that is starting with sales, which is the original CRM product, and 4 products that are linked. And you have unified operations, which is finance, supply chain management, retail, and talent. In the unified operations, it's not mentioned Business Central. That is a separate product that is not under unified operations. You can do with the old division pretty much everything what you can do with finance and operations, but it's not mentioned as unified operations. Microsoft Power Platform consists of the 4 components: Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agents. And we will look into all these kind of things a little bit later. When you hear the story that Microsoft was telling during this launch, sometimes you want to think back in where it all started for most of us. And the question is, where are we? Where are we ourselves, and where are we going? So Microsoft Dynamics 365 for finance and supply chain management is this year ranked as the 2nd most prominent ERP system after Oracle NetSuite. Last year it was the other way around. And the reason why that is that it's not the quality and the functionality of the product, but it has to do with the ability to execute, which is for the Microsoft product much weaker than for Oracle NetSuite. And there is a very interesting reason for that, because Oracle bought NetSuite after NetSuite was already quite famous. And NetSuite by origin is a SaaS product, and was doing a lot of projects themselves. Microsoft is an organization that is only working with partners for their ERP system. They have an organization which is doing projects, but they're only managing projects and not really executing them. They are using third parties for that. And it is considered, and that is not my opinion, but it is the opinion of the ones that have been investigating it. The reason that there is insufficient execute is the weak partner channel. And that the number of partners that are present in the market today is way less than it was ever before. And the reason for that is that quite some partners cannot keep up or are combining their resources into one new partner channel. To keep up with the strategy of Microsoft is not easy. And that is what we all in DycoTrade also find out. That it is not easy to follow them if you want to follow them anyway. So that is also still a decision to be made. When you look at new strategies, and that is also when you look at the strategy of the event, is that Microsoft is not addressing their partners. Microsoft is addressing their customers. And customers are very happy with this new strategy because they hear about it and they can make a decision to go for it, yes or no. Partners struggle to adopt. They think, yeah, but you have to think of me. And that is what Microsoft is absolutely not doing. Customers are for them quite important. And if partners follow, that is fine. We have all kinds of certifications, but partners are for us, and that is, I have to say, from the beginning, from 2002, that was difficult for Microsoft to understand that partners and not Microsoft are determining the quality of how their products are used and implemented. There is a reason also for why partners have problems. The customer strategy of today is no modifications on the core. I only use well-known ISV solutions, and I do a digital transformation using Power Platform myself. So that is in the house of the customer. All larger customers that we know of are doing that themselves. They are using freelancers or they're using somebody to do it, but most of the time it's in their way of working. I've been in 2 projects since 2017 with Microsoft Dynamics 365. That is the Rijksmuseum and a company called De Berg. And in both cases, their strategy was no modifications to the core, use some ISV solutions, and anything else we are doing ourselves. When we see that most AX partners go back to the early 2000, they pick up the product, and in fact, from that time on, they only knew one strategy, modifying the product using X++. There was no other way of doing it. And since 2017, things changed dramatically. And that is hard to keep up, hard to say I'm going to change my strategy complete on the strategy of Microsoft. But in a way, we have to keep on looking what they are doing and see what is good for us and see what is good for our customers. And like I said, Microsoft is targeting the customers, and customers know a lot about the new strategy. And that is what we hear in the past month, that customers saying, are you also doing this? Are you also doing that? So we have to follow to a certain extent. And that is what the decisions that we have to make are still there. And we will be forced to a certain extent to follow. Another thing is that from a historical perspective, everything what you see here has been part of Microsoft Dynamics AX from the beginning. So all those 9 apps that you see now from a functionality perspective, that always has been one app, and that was the app called AX. Talent is separate now, which was called HR before. Retail is now called retail and commerce, and that has been also integrated. Field service, project service automation, which is now part of the CRM store with the customer engagement situation, has always been part of their ERP product. So what you see is that standard finance and supply chain management is finance, asset management, and in supply chain management, we talk about warehouse management, purchasing, so sourcing, and production. So the functionality of the standard product is going down, and it is taken over by all kind of additional situations. If you talk about ISV solutions, then there are two typical ISV solutions from a character perspective. There are certain ISVs that have been designing their application built on the industry. So not on a customer, but on the industry. They were interviewing quite some customers and created a solution that can be used by many others. Good examples in the AX world is Anata, and another one is Unit 4 with the product management. They created their solution by talking to a lot of customers and came up with an ISV solution for that purpose. The other type of ISV solution is the one that is created based on the knowledge that we collected from individual customers. So you started with standard AX, you modified the product, and then you get a second customer in the same area, and you use the knowledge that you got from the first project, instead of finding out if there is no other way of getting behind that story. So to a certain extent, if we are making the discussion, or we're starting the discussion where DycoTrade is, officially we are an ISV, but we started the idea with building add-ons, bolt-ons on top of AX for certain customers. We are not doing a market study on how often is this happening or how can we do this. We are getting there to a certain extent. We are talking about functionality we would like to add to the product and said, how are others doing it? And that is a way of working, a way of managing that is different, because then you can also make a calculation regardless how much it will cost to build it, if there is a return on investment. If you build individual products in your master product and you have no idea how many times you are going to sell it, or if there is even a return on investment, then the question is, maybe we should only create it for this individual customer. But that is an ongoing story. I was working at To Increase since 2004, and that has been there every day. Was a discussion: shall we build this in the product, or shall we build this for the customer? And I have to say that the longer we were working, the more we created for customers separately instead of in our standard product. We wanted to have a solid, quality-based product that we can use for many customers. So this is the historical reflection, which means that, yes, there happened a lot of things. And we in DycoTrade and we in the AX partner channel network, we had to make quite some decisions in how we are going to move forward. And we made those decisions. And if we look back, then maybe we should this, maybe we should have done this. But that is not so important what we did. It's more important what we are going to do. So all the choices we made for a reason, and we didn't make it on purpose for a bad purpose. So we forget that, we made a decision, and now we have to get into a situation, what are we going to do? What are we, how are we going to be affected by this new products that Microsoft is coming up with their new strategy? Is that good for us? Where does it affect us? And those kind of things has to be answered from today on. When we look at Azure, Power Platform, Dynamics 365 and Microsoft 365, there is what we call a binding factor. Something that is laying over this platform, which gives us the opportunity to work together. And that product is called Dataverse. Dataverse, you would say. Yeah, it is an interesting thing was that when Microsoft started with putting AX to the cloud in 2016, in July 2016, they said we are going to bind all those products and we call this a common data model. And then we heard a lot of stories by saying, Microsoft, nice company, marketing, common data model, never heard of. Yeah, that is correct, it is new for us. And then what happened was we ignored it. We thought, that is not possible. And then we laughed at it and said, well, it's a good story, but it will never work. Then Microsoft changed that name to Common Data Services. Even they changed it to DataFlex, not realizing that there was a big American company which is also called DataFlex, so they had to call it back. So now they call it Dataverse. And Dataverse is the new name for Common Data Services. And what people see is that the strategy at that time in 2016 to come up with this binding factor for all these kind of components, now people say, wow, that's interesting. They are not laughing anymore. They have to fight it. And eventually, Microsoft is going to win. At least that is what they are saying, and I'm a strong believer for that. I saw this message first, and then the name standing under it was not there, but it is a name, a statement, and a quote of Mahatma Gandhi. Good to know, but that is it. That is also what we see in the world of where we are in technology. The same message here we can tell about going to the cloud, where people say, cloud? Do you think that I put my data in the cloud instead of on my own machine? And you have seen yourself how fast things were going. And now it is very logical to put it in the cloud because it is 10 times safer there than on your own machine. This Dataverse is, if you really look deep into the technology of the product, it is a master data dictionary, you can say. You can store all your information on tables and columns and store it in a way that you can address it from any place in the application. So, but it is based on the technology that is coming from originally CRM, because that was the way Microsoft CRM was created, is a product called XRM, and their data dictionary is pretty simple, and that was the basis for doing this. You can even add your own fields, your own tables to this and let them synchronize with other tables. That is the whole idea of Dataverse. So if you are looking for doing something with Power Apps or with Power Automate, anything what is accessible through Dataverse is possible. And this is the first steps into Synapse, where everything what is technically available in Synapse will be functional available in Dataverse so that we can access the data, Power BI, like I said, and Power Platform. Very interesting concept. It is for CRM, it's there, for all kind of other products also. For Microsoft Dynamics 365 Finance and Supply Chain Management, they are busy with it. They announced something like what we call a virtual Dataverse for that product, which means that yes, we can address it, but in an almost real-time version, which is called the dual write version. So you write it to the SQL Server database and you write it through Dataverse, both. That is how we now access the information through Dataverse for 365 Finance and Supply Chain Management. you can imagine that customers like this idea very much, because the data that they have access through Dataverse is available everywhere. It's what they call their data backbone, like you see here the guy of Rockwell Automation is saying. This is really an argument for a lot of big companies to work with the Microsoft products, work with the Microsoft strategy and their platform. You probably know that it's going so fast with the largest companies in the world moving to Microsoft 365 and Microsoft Dynamics 365, like Walmart, and there's a very big project in the military in US, and those are really important things, and we benefit from it because everything what is happening there is announced, is shown, and we can use it to a certain extent as in the templates. Good, so this was about Dataverse. Don't forget his name, forget CDS, forget Dataflex, forget Common Data Model. It's now Dataverse.
Yeah.
I'd like to switch to workspaces and dashboards. Recently, we run an experiment in DycoTrade Next to see what we can do with workspaces. Because Microsoft announced somewhat longer ago that you could have some kind of a real-time data functionality using Power BI embedded. That is the word. Forget this Power BI embedded instantly, but it means that through workspaces, we can have Power BI-like functionality directly from the SQL Server database of AX, which means real-time. We don't have to switch to another environment. We don't have to switch to a cube where we can have reports. No, you can do it directly from the SQL Server database. In the standard CTRM solution, when we were looking at it, we didn't see any workspaces because the workspaces were disconnected. For your information, there are there are approximately 50 ready-to-use workspaces available in the standard product, and we created some of them that has to do with specific things in the CTRM solution. We are working on that to make that available. And the first presentations we did for customers were a big success, where they were saying, this is what we are doing it for. We are not using CTRM for putting only contracts into the system. We would like to know what the consequences are when we have those contracts, or what we do with the sales and what the position is and so on. So we created some example workspaces for positioning reporting, and the next one that we are taking care of right now is mark to market. Those are specific things where we constantly are trying to get to the right workspace, because that concept is very interesting. And like I said before, there is a reason why we didn't do it. That's fine, and but now we are starting to use it again because it is really interesting to do it. We are working with customers that are only working with workspaces. They don't have the normal menu system available because that is not what they like. What you see in those workspaces is that you have on the left-hand side what we call an operational view. So where you see information of the operational thing that you were starting, and on the right-hand side, there is you can click on what we call the analytical view, and it is more into this Power BI strategy. It is not Power BI because it's still existing Power BI, but it is embedded Power BI, which means it is run on the SQL Server database in the format of a Power BI cube. So you can do many more things. What is interesting, that it's also changing your idea about reports. When you want to talk about, like this screen, and you see that one more time again, it's about customer credit and collections. It's how much money do we have under our customers? That is an indication. And I don't need to have a whole report of all those amounts. No, I want to have the total. How many customers for how much money? And what is the average day outstanding? Or is there a spread over customers that are paying badly? So maybe we should adjust our terms and conditions for customers in that country. Or maybe it's customers that are buying certain products. What we find out ourselves in a project is that certain customers are paying amounts of their invoices over a certain border. I say it wrongly. So when we send an invoice to a customer, and when the invoice is higher than, for instance, 10,000 euro, they have a problem paying it. Smaller invoices, they pay easily. And we did an artificial intelligence project, machine learning, trying to find out where the border is of those customers. And in certain cases, we found that it is 2,500 euros, which probably means that it is the approval threshold for a certain employee. So we said to the customer, let's do an experiment. Only send invoices less than 2,500 euros, and they were paid all in time. So that is information that is valuable, and then you don't need the individual report, but you need indicators, and that is what an analytical view is doing. A lot of the Power BI reports that we create today are reports and are not giving the right information, not always I'm saying, not the right information. So combining the operational view and the analytical view in something what is real time makes it very interesting for customers. This week, we did a workshop, a discovery workshop for a customer, and they had what they call touch points that we had to walk through. And touch point 5 was invoice to cash, their process invoice to cash. So they were invoicing and they want to have the timing of payment, the reminders to customers, all that kind of stuff. Question is that functionality in our product? The answer is yes, but it is not hard to find if you know where it is, but it is all kind of functions that you have to start. Our solution, what we presented, was the workspace collections. So we showed them, we told them on a Thursday, last week Thursday, that we are going to do this, and we presented this on a Tuesday. So they said, oh, you were working very hard to create this, but we didn't mention it that it is standard. This is a standard workspace in Dynamics 365. This is exactly what it is, showing you where the money is, showing you what the outstanding activities are that people have to do, the basic list that they wanted, and on the right-hand side, you see the links that they might perform for doing additional reports and so on. This is exactly what they needed. That's what they said. I can use this tomorrow. Their statement was, so it means that if this is a workspace and we have more workspaces, then we better start creating a workspace for a trader. So that is what we are going to do right now. Like I mentioned, there are 50 of these workspace standard. We are activating them all, and we are going to talk with you a little bit more in an additional session. But this is interesting. In the old days, Microsoft started to come with what they called role centers. And those role centers had a big problem because their performance was very bad. And that changed a lot. So what you see here is, this is the work of somebody. And this is collection of functionality that we have. So creating a new workspace for a new employee in a company doesn't necessarily have to be that we have to create functionality, but we are creating a place where there is a collection of all the things that he normally is doing and with the most important information available. Funnily enough, that if we would start analytics, which you see there, then in analytics, we can also choose for the option of changing the functionality of this analytical view. And that changing the functionality of the analytical view looks a lot like what you can do today with Power BI. So not only the filters that you can change, but you can change the layout and all that kind of stuff. Customers can do that. This document, this page, what you see here, is also created by a company which is using talent as a product. And this is the headcount by location, where people are, and this gives the total information how things are going in one view. And this is what companies like. Companies realize that having this kind of screens, you need to enter a lot of information in the system, but that is not the core activity what they are doing. They see this more as a necessary need of getting the information, but it is not the key element. If you are going to show that you can enter employees in your system, yeah, they are happy to say, okay, I understand it. But the way you organize and the way you present information is for them way more important. Microsoft is coming with more and more of those standard workspaces themselves. This is the CFO workspace, and this is also what we showed to existing customers. And that is exactly what they said. This is what we want. We want to have figures, total figures, of what things are doing. That is where we can have answers to questions people are asking us. We can dig in. When you see on the bottom line, you see this is the overview, but we can have a balance sheet inside, and you can have multiple reports where they can present the data directly from the SQL Server database. So any transaction that is created, it's working here. What you see here is an real-time statistics, where we said you have to recalculate the thing when there is a new transaction coming in. Anytime when there is a new transaction, no matter where it's coming from, you have to do that. That signal, that trigger, can also come from the outside. So if there is a new price on a stock exchange, then recalculate. What does it mean for our position? What can we do with this? And these are the things that you can present in your documentation of a customer real time. Good. This is for so far the presentation of the workspaces. Like I said, this is a high priority activity. We are really working on it very hard to make them available, so that you know that they are there. And then we do a new presentation to show most of them, and then also come up with some specific statistics for CTRM. The funny thing is that when we launched the result of the experiment, then Auko was jumping and say, okay, I need a movie of it. And we involved Nick to create some documentation. And then our lady from marketing created this movie, and Auko presented it on LinkedIn. That was within a week, all those kind of things. And the result was that we got quite some feedback of people saying, wow, this is great. I also want this. Now, that is, we try to work with new technology on those kind of statements, so that customers are liking it, staying closer with us than they've been before. And that is a good thing. It's not only for existing customers, but we also are reaching now external companies that are saying, This is quite interesting. And this is what we are going to do more and more. Another product from the Power Platform is Power Automate. And I think that this is for people that never used this kind of products. You should not underestimate what this can mean for your individual implementations at customers, but also for certain parts of the solution. I will give you some practical examples. My first flow, my first Power Automate project was in 2006, where we worked with a customer that has very interesting strategies and changes, and every day something could change in the process, and it was almost impossible to program that, because then we needed to put a programmer next to the guy that was doing the things and made a new program. Somewhat later, in 2009, I started working for a company, and one of their customers was in Dutch, the Koninklijke Nederlandse Hippische Sportbond. And that equestrian company, they had a rule book. So when you were participating in a game, then you could gain points, but there were all kind of rules that they had, when not, and when this, and when that. And they want the AX application they had to do that. So the first idea was to program it, to say, our knowledge is X++, so we should do it in X++. And he said, that is not possible, because how often do you change this rule book? Now, they said every month there's a change, and every 6 months we have big rule changes, and every year we make a new one. So we started to build what we called a business rule engine, an engine that is interpreting the things that are happening. And that is the best comparison to Power Automate, where you have the situation where you can create a diagram of things that are happening, and that is the basis for creating a flow. So what you see in the picture is a Visio diagram, and when you're ready with this diagram and it is okay, when you think this is good, then you push the button, and he is automatically copying this diagram and the steps that you have there into Flow. If you do so, and that has to do with the terminology that I have there of the customer journey, that was also asked by one customer. They said, we have a tool created in AX 2012 for the customer journey. The problem is that when we would like to add something or change something, we need to program it. And that is difficult. And not difficult to program it, but it is from a timing perspective, we want to change it tomorrow. And if we ask you to change it, it costs us a month. And then we have to test everything and all that kind of stuff. We said we would like to do this by modeling your model, the journey, using CRM and Power Automate. And one of the most important reasons for it is that it is full flexibility for the customer in definition and design, because they can do this themselves. If they don't want it, we can talk. We can create it in a Teams meeting. And it is outside of the ERP environment. It is using the data of the ERP environment. But it's not influencing the functionality at all. It's influencing the outcome of it, but not more than that. So when there is a new version of Dynamics 365 or a new version of CTRM, still those diagrams, still those the flows will keep on working. We are going to use this for that customer doing process mining, which means that all the steps that they are taking and everything what they are doing, we are making an audit of it with all the steps, saying on that date, that time, with the timestamp, you did this and you sent a document out, a PDF. You can analyze those kind of things, how long it is taking from the offer that we did, taking the order in, till the goods arriving at the customer. There you can say, oh, I see, and that is where artificial intelligence comes in. You can analyze all those steps that you are taking, and you can ask why this step is longer than what it is normal. Then you can give an example or a reason. Then next time he is interpreting that reason. And that is where you can have the most optimal flow for covering your customers. If you say it's coming tomorrow, it will come tomorrow. And that is exactly what this customer wanted. So, wow, that is a lot of work to be done. Yeah, that is true. But you can do it yourself, and you can do it in a way that it is based on a template. And then we came up with the example that when Excel came to market and everybody starts working with Excel, then when there is a template, when there is an example of an Excel worksheet, then we understand it. Oh yeah, that is the formula I recognize and I can change it, blah, blah, blah. But as soon as we have an empty sheet, an empty worksheet, and you have to create your own situation, that is sometimes way harder. This is the same thing with these flows. Yeah, but how shall I do this? It is pretty logical. Yeah, but you have done it before. So therefore we are creating templates. And there are hundreds of templates. And this is also what you should understand when we have one solution now, one Power Platform, where Microsoft is adding all those templates. And customers are adding all those templates to an environment where we, as DycoTrade, but also our customers, have access to. They can come up with, oh, send an email to any audience when a Power BI data alert is triggered, or whatever. We can create them ourselves. We can use those we can use those templates and send it back to the platform so that others can use it instantly themselves. Building flows is not difficult because it is logical. I'm sitting here in the room with Leon, and if I ask him to start creating a flow, then it is only logical. I want this, and then I want this, and then I want this, and then I want that. Maybe not, or only in case of. And that is exactly how a flow evolves. So there is always a trigger, and there is an action. That is the simple format of a flow. So you start some flow by having a trigger. And the trigger can be a lot of things, and that is what I will show you also a little bit later. And then we go through the flow, and it ends with an action. And the action can be give me a message that things were wrong, or execute something, or do something, or end, and it goes on. This is an example. When a record is created, run an UI flow from the desktop, and then we go a little bit further, and then at the end he's creating things. It goes very, very far, this whole story. If you are seeing here now the word UI flow, you have to refer to what we called before robotic process automation. With this robotic process automation can give you a situation where you start looking at maybe when we create a new customer, we would like to see if his VAT number is correct. There is a website called europe.eu where you can check if the VAT numbers are correct, if the company is existing for all the EU countries. So if you have a flow and you do it with UI flow, then the question is this customer in the EU? If the answer is yes, then I can check, which means I make a connection from the flow directly to the database of the Europe. I enter the data that they normally would do if I would access it outside the application, and I get a number back, or I get the name of the company back, or I get the message invalid doesn't exist. This information is running on the back end, so I don't even see it. And we created some projects where we are doing this with UiFlow pretty easily. Getting data from another screen, getting data from other applications by just entering, putting the right buttons on the way you would do it when you were exiting or executing it from an external perspective. Think of any application for the use of UiFlow, and there are many, many. One of the things that with robotic process automation and artificial intelligence is used for, in many cases, is reading emails. So when a company has emails coming in, then you can have the process started when an email is coming in, and then you start doing things. And one of the things is it the right person that we send the email to? Maybe he's not working at a company anymore. Where do we get them? Another thing is, in this case, you extract an invoice picture as an attachment from the email. I first recognize that there is an attachment, and if there is no attachment, he will go on. And when there is an attachment, he will extract it. Then he will take action based on confidence, which means that the AI builder said, I do an interpretation of the picture that I'm seeing, and I tell you if I can read it, yes or no. And the confidence is set to, let's say, 70%. So it means that if the AI builder is saying, yes, I'm reading the attachment, and I see what I can do with it, and my confidence level is 75, which means that if confidence level is at that high, then I say, okay, save the invoice details. If he is not able to read it, then the confidence score will be lower than 70, and then he will present me the information and ask for an approval. And then he's asking, if you go a little bit further, how could I have known this? What shall I do next time to do the thing myself? And then you're adding it to artificial intelligence. Then you're adding the rule that is making him work automatically. This goes fast. This goes very fast. When you talk about flows, when do we trigger them? This automated flows, that is what you just saw, is created because of there was a record created or there was a value changed on a certain field. In a customer journey, it could be that the status of product lifecycle is changing, and that is what we call an automated flow. You also have button flows. So you present a button on a form, but for your information, the button is not really a button. It's more or less on top of the screen, but not really in the screen. But you can push it. And when you push that button, he is executing some tasks. You have approval flows. An approval flow is, for instance, something that you attach to a mail. When you say, you are the one that should approve this amount for certain buying things. Do you approve it? And that is the attachment in a mail. And in the mail, you can say yes or no. And then when you say yes, it comes back, get the information, and he's doing what he's doing. This is what a lot of people like. The larger the company, the more of these tools are used. Because if you have 600 people and you have to check all the mails and all that kind of stuff, then you would like to have that more automated. Good. This is, for now, I think, Power Automate. Yeah. Which means that Power Automate is one of the most powerful tools that I know of the Power Platform. And when we look at the work that DycoTrade is doing, it could easily be that we are talking more in the sense of we should not change so many things for individual customers in the code. Maybe it's much better to use flow to react differently on certain situations by just creating a different flow. So the functionality of the master is telling us something, and when we get to do this point and we add a flow, then we can change the functionality by adding the flow and going on with the rest of the process. Do not change the standard. Try to avoid it and see if there are options that you can do, especially in projects. So that makes it more easy to do. Advantages, customers can do it, you can do it, consultants can do it on a project, and you see direct result. So I think we will spend quite some time on teaching how this can work and in what situations. Then we move to something that is not only practical, but also funny, and that is Power Apps. A lot of discussion regarding Power Apps and so on. The reason why we have these functionalities is because of customers that are using legacy systems. One of the first low-code development environments was a product called forgot the name, doesn't matter. Low code, it's something without. And then that is mostly used by governments, by insurance companies, by banks, because they will never change their legacy system. They want to add something, functionality, new functionality, and it is simple most of the time. That is why they want to use this Power Apps-like environments. There is a pretty famous one here in Holland called Betty Blocks. There's another one. All those products are created to be no code or low code. And that is, if it's no code or low code, it has to do with marketing. If it's a no code environment, then you have to be careful. If it's a low code, it's just, okay, at least I can change something. And that is what we normally see. Also in Power Apps, the intention of a Power App is to create new input, to create information which is a front end. Where customers are saying, if I have to enter all the data into the screens of Microsoft Dynamics 365 for finance, that is an awful screen. It is completely full. I only have to enter two things. Then it is interesting to create a Power App. We have been creating Power Apps for examples in a sales situation for sampling. And we have done it, and that is done by Martijn for coffee snubbing, for tasting coffee. It is easy to do it. You can do a lot of things, and there is no big problem, because you can create data, and then the question is the data correct to get to put it into our system? That checking point is always after you enter the story, and that is good. There are two types of apps that you can create. This Power Apps is, like I said, intended for customers, for customer organizations. That is citizen development. There are also other things called logic apps, and a logic app has more functionality normally, and that is created by developers, but it has the same principle of being rather simple, but probably with more functionality in the backend, and that is why we are calling them logic apps. Power Apps are in a certain way expensive, because you have to pay quite some money for it to Microsoft. And that is what you have to be careful when you start going for a Power Apps project, because then suddenly, and that is typically Microsoft, it is like having a neighbor who is running a wheat store in his house using your electricity. That is what Microsoft is doing then all the time. You hear almost the electricity going from one end to the other. Like the same with Flow, there are many examples on how to do these things and how to work with them. Microsoft had an idea of having these Power Apps running on their own devices, but that is what they are doing not for a long time anymore. So Microsoft is creating Power Apps for I/O and for Google, for Android, and not for their own phones, because that was not really a good idea. A lot of examples. You can create it as a project. They work. They have nothing to do with the functionality of what you are doing in your ERP system from a CRM perspective, but you can make it lighter for the end user to enter some data in some simplified format. And the checking, what you are doing is the exact same checking as it was entered into CRM itself. The creation of these type of dashboards, what you see here is, we are working, I mentioned to you, we are working in this customer at Berg, and they are using Power Apps for a lot of things, and they are getting quite complex. And that is good. They like it a lot, and they are not dependent on any partner that is implementing the stories. And it is a clear cut in who is doing what. We are doing there the creation of additional functionality from a bigger perspective, but all those kind of things like Flow and Power Apps, they are doing themselves. They have 5-6 people who are doing that. Maybe you know a company called Tiger, and that is selling cheaper products. There's a Danish company, and they have more than 30 people in their company working on Flow and on Power Apps. This is a trend that customers are doing way more themselves. That has been there for a long time. I once was in Coolblue. Coolblue has a IT department of roughly 100 people, and they say that we are a software company delivering refrigerators, and they build everything themselves. So this is an example of a logic app that is goes a little bit further. Then you have to make stories, and then you convert it into an app. Good. This is a little bit about the products that Microsoft was announcing with a lot of changes in the session. When we look at the documentation that they have available, there is a booklet of 425 pages, something like that, telling all the changes, the physical changes that they made to all the products of Microsoft Dynamics 365. So everything that has been changed with the date of when the general availability is there is available in a document. And that would be very interesting to understand. Even so, especially when we start making new functionality in the master or new functionality for customers to reflect if in the new version of the application, it is already there, yes or no. Because that is something, when you talk about having one version of the application, that Microsoft is changing the functionality all the time. And they are telling you in that document. That's the only way they are doing it, because they are not upgrading, they are just updating. And that means that any new functionality they describe, they announce, but if you want the functionality, you have to switch it on. It is not never automatic. So that means that your application from a functionality perspective, the standard application, will work all the time. And that is the idea of a SaaS solution. And the best examples are the competitors like NetSuite. NetSuite is upgrading every week. And AWS, so Amazon, is updating some of their platforms every 16 seconds. And if they ask you to test your whole application again because they did an update, then that is an impossible question. So when you have a real SaaS product, the changes to the application should be simple updates and no upgrades. And we have to be honest by saying that that has not been always the case with Microsoft. You can say that their environment, their SaaS environment, is getting more and more stable and okay. And from a functionality perspective, also good. I go back to the years at Rijksmuseum, where we had to ask Microsoft to put back a version of yesterday, and they said, yeah, that takes a week. Yeah, but you made a mistake. There's a bug in your product, and we have a problem. Yeah, you still have to wait a week. Now, those kind of answers you don't hear anymore, or not often anymore, because that is a problem. And they moved fast, but if you have lived from the beginning with these kind of answers, then you are a little bit cautious when you do things. Now we get to the point where we say, what is this? What has this in play for us at the DycoTrade? This is a picture that I showed also in the first presentation in April or something like that. One thing is important, that we are playing an infinite game, which means that we do it to exist all the time. We don't do it to win a game. We do it for existence, for every time we have to go on. And when we feel that other companies or our competitors are moving faster than we do, we need to pivot. We need to change our direction by saying, oh, what is going on here? We need to do this or we need to do that. We have to stay ahead of the curve. We have to take in. We made some changes. We made some decisions in the past years. And we have to live through those decisions by saying, yeah, we have to finalize it. But we know that we have to move faster in certain areas, and we are going to do that. And it has to do with our product portfolio, so the products that we have. That has to do with the way we get into customer engagement, so in the pre-sales, and also when we deliver customer services, so when we do projects. Then we need to be better every day. And that is not because we are bad today, no, but we can be better. Good example is somebody said, yeah, we were doing a digital transformation project that was in the government. And there was a discussion about we have to do better than yesterday. And then they were talking an hour or so about, yeah, we are now having a satisfaction rate of 56, and we would like to get to 90. And then somebody else said, but why not 85? So they start discussing an hour, 85 or 90. And then the guy said, we are stopping this discussion now, because if it's better than 56, then we're already doing well. And that is how you should think. Every day we should get better and not sit and say, okay, that is not going well. And this. If it's not going well, we should learn how to do it better. And the message is we should scale up. We should go faster. And we have some very interesting projects at our hands. Our idea is that the projects are getting bigger, and that is good, because then there are more things possible, that people are more open for new things most of the time. We can protect our investments, meaning that if there is a customer that is asking for certain functionality that we do not have in the master, then we have to really think whether we should do it, yes or no, and what the benefits would be. Saying no is very difficult in the sales process, but sometimes it's better than just go ahead. And this is not my opinion, this is a balanced opinion by several people in the organization. We have to help our employees to live according this way of working. That we see that there are new things that are important for us to do the projects, and are things that are new and are good enough for using in our product portfolio, but not everything, and everything should have a reason. And that is where we have to work together as a team. If you think of the differences of Microsoft 2012 and the benefits that we have with the new applications of finance and supply chain management, then there are things you have to understand things. What we did with this historical reflection, yes, we all come from an AX environment. Some people from somewhat longer than others, and suddenly, in the summer of 2016, suddenly Microsoft was switching, and they said we are going to deliver the product only as a SaaS product. We ignored it, we laughed, but now we have to fight it because it is like that. And the functionality originally started with what they had from AX 2012. But since 2018, there were quite some new developments, and that is what we see now also in 2020. There is quite some functionality changes, and the document will be made available so that people can read it. But I suggest also, when we are doing a new project, that we really look into what is different, what can we learn from what Microsoft added to it, and maybe it's also something that we should apply, or yes or no. From an infrastructure perspective, the same thing. It was announced 2016 cloud, and then a lot of people, especially in certain countries, were saying that is not possible because we do not have access through the internet. So then I cannot go cloud-based. So they created an on-premise version, which is a disaster, and nobody is almost using it anymore. You have to get used to those kind of new environments. Sometimes it's going faster than anything else, and with cloud-based it was amazing how fast people adopted cloud-based applications. From a custom development perspective, statement of Microsoft is the core code is locked. Same thing. We ignored it, we laughed at it, and now we have to fight it. And Microsoft wins, and that is the problem. When they announce something, they win, eventually, if we want it or not. And that is where we have to be flexible and creative to say, what does that mean for us when the core code is locked? Yeah, but we still can do extensions. But maybe we don't want to do extensions. Maybe we do want to do it differently. So we should take a little bit more time to think of the statements that Microsoft is making, what kind of effect it will have on our work, and make the right decision as possible. The upgrade model is called one version. And in fact, it is not an upgrade model anymore, but the upgrade model is what we understand, especially when we come from AX4 to 2009, from 2009 to 2012, and now to 365. And anybody, any customer that I talk with that has been upgrading from AX4 to AX 2009, they don't want to upgrade anymore because that is a disaster for those companies. And now we have to tell them it is just an update. And in fact, it is not an update at all. And that is why we have to do the strategy a little bit different. And that is how we do it. We say it is in fact a new implementation. And the reason why we do it is then we can have the benefits of everything what we see, and we create an environment that is more stable than anything else. If you just take it as an upgrade from AX 2012 to 365, not working, or maybe compiling but not really working. The idea is that it is a lower cost of operation to have one version. You can fight it, but it is like this. Remember the old days that we had a CD-ROM, and if you got a new version, got a new CD, and you have to do all that kind of work. They have to distribute all those things to the individual customers. I just mentioned in one of the slides in the beginning that there are more than 500,000 customers. So they have to distribute 500,000 floppies or CDs, and you have no idea if people are using them, yes or no. So they are calling support. They said, on which version are you? Not possible. So therefore, in a SaaS situation, you only talk about one version. Accept it. That is how it works. The core will be updated. eventually 8 times a year. That is what Microsoft wants. And probably that is going up, that number. Because it's not important anymore if it's going well. If you only have a core that is updated with new things and where some bugs are solved, and when you have new functionality that you have to switch on using a parameter or a configuration key, no problem. But it should be stable, and that is where Microsoft have been working on in the past 3 years, and they're not 100% there yet, but they are getting there. And then I don't mind how many times they are upgrading. It makes my product only better, and that is what it should be. Here is an important one when we talk about X++ and the things of AX. Our user interface is now a web browser, which means that the UI of the application is completely differently created than what it was when we were working with the AX products. That is a fact. And that is also when we talk about upgrade new sessions for developers, we will show you what the difference is. I run a project in 2012, creating a platform called the Dinosaurs, maybe you heard of it, and that was a web-based platform. And we came from the world of creating AX applications, and we had no idea what the difference was. But we learned it, and that was a very expensive trip, I have to say. The user interface of Microsoft is leaning a lot on workspaces because they feel that now they created, compared to role centers, now they created workspaces in a way that it is very, very practical for customers to use. And for us, it is just the combination of all kind of functionality that we've created for customers to use in the best possible way. And then a little thing, but that is for end users quite interesting. Navigation is easy. You are typing in a search bar what kind of functionality you want, and if you say customer, then you see all that kind of stuff. I'm using Google for searching. Microsoft is using Bing. Maybe they should look at Google a little bit better to make this navigation, because it is interesting to do the search, but it's not always 100% correct. But it is interesting for end users. Good. When we talk about going fast forward from an efficiency and an effectiveness perspective, we need to start with an efficient solution architecture where we focus on business knowledge. And we use everything what we have from a technology capability to build the best possible ISV solution and customer project. And those are two different things. That is, business knowledge is something that is really important. If we understand the customer when he is telling what his problem is, then we shouldn't talk about technology, we should talk about the solution. And when we talk about a solution, there needs to be a problem. So if we think that we have a good solution for the customer, we have to ask for the problem. Because if we do so, then he recognizes that we are a company that has the knowledge of commodity trading in a certain way, and we know exactly the pain points of his industry. If we focus on that and we come up with a solution that is covering all his issues, then there is no end to success for DycoTrade. Also at customer projects, identifying gray areas or identifying gaps doesn't mean necessarily that we need AX development. That is what I try to show you, that there are other ways of doing things. Be careful to come up with certain things that can be expensive or maybe not even from a functionality perspective doing what it should do. And that is, if we talk about solution architecture at projects, that is an activity that we should add to our process. Then a remark for developers that are watching. Today, all Microsoft apps are websites. So when you look at Microsoft Dynamics 365 finance and operations is a website. Everything is a website. And if you look at how Microsoft are creating all of their products, except for Microsoft 365 Finance Operations and Business Central, they are creating those solutions using Microsoft Fluent UI. That is a technical environment where you can create the most wonderful websites and projects and products in the style of Microsoft. And they are using a completely different programming language for it. Everything what we do at a company like at Terberg, when we have to create new applications for them, which it sometimes happens, we are creating them in React, JavaScript. And if I'm not mistaken, then React is a language that was created by Facebook. There is another language that is used in the world of artificial intelligence and machine learning, that is Python. And maybe you were reading it in the news. That was originally created by a Dutch guy who is now, he was with a pension, and Microsoft hired him because he could not sit at home. He didn't like fishing, so he went to Microsoft now. And he created Python. And the funny thing is that people asking where is the name Python coming from? And it has to do with Monty Python's Flying Circus, that he liked it a lot. He was a fan, and that is why he named the product like that. It's easy to use for the purpose of what it was created for. And that is the thing. Okay, we have a presentation plan forward. Because if we only stick to this presentation, then you say, oh, interesting, and then nothing happens. So now we want to be ready to go for next sessions. We will communicate it as soon as possible, but we also need you. The separate sessions will be short, 1 hour, hands-on, only one subject. They will always be online and sometimes also live, which means that people that are in the house could join them, because that connection with people that have knowledge of a certain subject is sometimes interesting for the discussion. Otherwise, it's one-way traffic like this time. We only organize those sessions when there is an audience. We did once a session for customers to replace the customer event in Amsterdam in May. And then we had one customer one time, and that is not good. So we only do it when there is an audience. And these are the ones that we have in mind. So it's they have a name and a number. So they are for C for consultants, there are P for product, and there are D for developers. And we are taking care of it, and it is not necessary that only consultants or only developers are attending the sessions. If you think that it is an interesting subject, you're very welcome to do so. Like I said, we are recording these ones, these 1 hour sessions, for also to be able to replay them for people that have not been available to watch them. And then the most important slide that we have of today, that is what we call your voice. Last time when we did presentations and asked for a comment, the mailbox stayed empty, and hopefully that will not be this time. We would like you to give us any input on anything, especially on which sessions you like or which sessions you would like, so that we can reorganize and do things together. But we will also communicate when we are not having a session because there are no people attending, so that you can see yourself how important it is for your education, for your moving forward into additional knowledge sharing with your colleagues and also with people on your project. So please send us your input. It's very valuable. Like we said, like you saw on the previous picture of the Toffler Institute, if you think that you know everything, then it is not really the case. That I can easily say. Mm-hmm. I thank you very much for your attention. If there are any questions, please send them to the email address. I will leave it here for 5 minutes so that you can still see it. And then hopefully to the next session which will be organized early December. Thank you very much, and already a happy weekend or good Thanksgiving.